Visit Tudor Place February 6th through April 21st to experience the new installation, Ancestral Spaces, People of African Descent at Tudor Place. Curated in collaboration with the descendant community, this guided tour gives voice to the enslaved and free people who lived and worked in this historic house and recognizes that the site was supported by forced labor for generations. Tours are available Tuesday through Sunday. Advanced registration is recommended, but not required, at tudorplace.org. Once again, that's tudorplace.org.
Today on CityCast DC, if you've spent any time recently at the L'Enfant Plaza Metro station, you might have noticed something about the signage. It's different. And the new look is coming to a station near you. The system, you see, is rolling out one of the biggest visual changes in its history. We talked with Sarah Meyer, Metro's new Chief Experience Officer, about the hidden in plain sight magic of subway signs and how the new initiative will change the way folks navigate the Metro. Today is Thursday, January 25th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
So tell me about this signage redesign. What are you guys doing? Why are you doing it?
Sure. We have been hearing from our customers that they feel lost. I joined Metro over the summer in July, and getting to work, I was lost too. So best thing we could do, right, is fix it. And so...
Well, I don't know. You're an out-of-towner. I mean, isn't the whole secret scheme to confuse the out-of-towners so that we can get around faster?
Could be. The problem was that even on the second week, the third week, I was still getting lost. And then when I would ask people about it, they were lost too. So our registered Smart Trip users, even the regular folks that use it on a regular basis, they're getting lost. So we knew we had to fix it.
Can you just walk me through the basics of what you guys are changing?
Sure. We are changing all of the signage that you'll see on the ceilings as well as on the walls. And we are changing the digital signs that you see as you walk into the station and the digital signs that are on the platform.
And the change is going to be what, just broadly?
So we are adding cardinal directions, not ordinal.
Does cardinal mean northwest, south?
Yes. So we're adding northwest, south, east, eastbound to our signage. We're also adding next stop lists. So you will know real time on those digital screens what the next 7 or 8 stops are on that train. So for the blue, orange, silver, that's particularly important because each one of those trains goes to different destinations.
You just ask one cardinal direction question. This is a parochial interest of someone who lives on the red line. It's shaped like a horseshoe. What the heck is north, south, east, and west when you've got something that shape?
We've got northeast and northwest, and you'll see what happens.
My brain hurts.
There's a lot of different ways we can work through this. And the goal is, making sure that we reduce the number of people wandering around, scratching their heads and wondering where they are.
Who knew there was a whole city of people getting lost out there? So you are the Chief Experience Officer for Metro. You had a job like this at the MTA in New York. You are certified geeky for signage.
I love maps.
So break it down for those of us who are not. What design styles make it easier for folks to get around, or more interestingly, maybe, what design styles really screw things up for people trying to get around?
There has to be some sort of organizing system. And I think, through no fault of its own, WMATA and the way that the Army Corps of Engineers engineered the system, used some military jargon and framework from the very beginning. They labeled the stations as numbers and letters, and that sort of history was never completed. Once we started naming stations instead of using them as numbers and letters, there wasn't a very good mapping system to help people get from station to station. And generally, the agency started using terminal stations, not cardinal directions, not downtown, uptown, but instead those terminal stations.
Terminal meaning like Red Line to Shady Grove.
Right. Shady Grove, Glenmont, Greenbelt. That was the system. That was the wayfinding system that the entire signage platform was built against. And for those that are out of town, and even those that have lived in DC for a long time, they might not know where Greenbelt is. And that was sort of the fatal flaw that we're trying to correct now.
So is there any, station that was particularly bad or particularly irritating example of signs that tripped people up? Like, I get the idea that somebody who's not from here might not necessarily know that Shady Grove is in that direction or Glenmont is in that direction.
Yeah, I think what we're so blessed with is that our stations are so beautiful. They're really designed, in this brutalist architecture framework that's, really does take your breath away. But, when you think about origins of beauty and what we think are beautiful, we think a lot about symmetry. And so when you look at our stations, they all look the same. And especially when you look at transfer stations, and here we're talking about Metro Center, Gallery Place, and L'Enfant Plaza, all of the exits and entrances look the same. And because of that, you're sort of always lost, right? Every train platform looks the same and every exit looks the same.
So like if you're in another city with a differently designed subway system, you might look out the window when you pass a certain station and you'd know, hey, I'm at Metro Center now because that chandelier looks different or something like that.
Exactly. There would be landmarks. And you'd also have those frameworks that would say uptown or downtown, right? That might also help.
Let's be real. Lawsuits are not fun. But with Paulson & Nace, at least they're a little easier. Paulson & Nace is a DC law firm in every sense of the word. It was founded here in 1979. The two partners, Chris and Matt Nace, were both born here and are local leaders who care deeply about the DC community. Paulson & Nace handles medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases when someone has been hurt by the negligence of others. And they don't just settle every case. They'll go to court. They'll fight for you. Paulson & Nace has even been recognized as one of U.S. News' best law firms. So, if you have been hurt or have lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson & Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999. I remember hearing about an airport design where they had literally laid out the tiles in a certain way to kind of subtly create an arrow pointing you in the direction they wanted to go. I assume there's a bunch of that's sort of part of Metro or any public space that sort of civilians might not even notice. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I think right at L'Enfant Plaza, there's some works of art that have different colored backgrounds. And people can know their exits if they know the color background is different on the piece of art. And that is too subtle for me and for a lot of other customers. So that's part of how I think, previous generations of WMATA leadership might have tried to handle the wayfinding problem. But now, we're just here to make signs so that people can get around without the clues.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have found, you've got these pylons in the stations, and they're very much part of the Metro look. But because they're sort of pointed in a diagonal, people get confused by those.
Exactly. And so we're just working on simplifying things. Instead of using stripes, we're using the circular dots that people are very familiar with. We're putting letters, right, to say if it's a red line, instead of that stripe that people might not notice, we're instead putting that train bullet, that train circle with the letters RD in it, so people really understand it's the red line.
So I assume it's there's sort of a fine balance to strike, because there is such a iconic look to the Metro system, and you don't want to dislodge that, but at the same time, you don't want people to get lost.
Exactly, and if we were simply judging aesthetics here, I would vote very much in favor of the original pylon design. But at this point in time, right, we are looking to bring ridership back. We're looking at discretionary travel more, trying to, now that people are working from home, perhaps they're going out to dinner and exploring another neighborhood. And we want them to use transit and to really understand that the red line is there to get you home. And so working really hard to just make things more understandable.
I'm wondering if there's any city or system that you took inspiration from to redo the signage that boy, Hong Kong is really easy to get around or something like that.
I have this great book called Transit Maps of the World.
I got that book too.
It's awesome. And, it's got a really helpful index of all of, obviously the maps, but also wayfinding signage. And Mexico City, I think, is most similar to our map, same designer. And so we're picking up some things from there that we're experimenting with at L'Enfant Plaza. And hopefully, if customers agree that things are clearer, we'll roll these out to more and more stations.
Because right now it's just at L'Enfant Plaza, which is conveniently across the street from your office. Correct.
It's also the number 1 rated most confusing station. So I do recognize, yes, it is across the street from me. I'm happy about that because I get to check the progress every day.
I wonder if you got input from, I realize this tweak is not really aimed at the power riders who presumably know where they're going, but I wonder if you did get input from frequent Metro users about stuff they'd like to see.
Definitely. And we are working really hard to incorporate everybody's feedback. I think, part of the challenge here is that everybody wants everything all at once, right? This is the United States, this is Washington, D.C., and we have a very demanding and educated audience, and more information is better to them than less. But with that comes challenges. So putting a stop list in its entirety on one pylon reduces the font to such an extent that it becomes unreadable. And you see that now, and that we're fixing and changing.
So what are you doing specifically instead of that?
So we're not able to list every single stop so that we can enlarge the font, which is both good for ADA reasons, right? We want everybody to be able to see what these letters mean. And we're not IDing every single stop because at the end of the day, there's a lot of different ways people get information, and on-track signage might not be the best to communicate, right, the 50 stops that are on the line.
But wait a minute. So if I am from out of town and I'm going to Tacoma Park.
Yeah, far away.
Far away, but not, a terminal station, not like a big tourist destination. It might not show up on the pylon. Is the idea that nowadays you're counting on folks to have a smartphone or something like that, so they don't need every piece of information on a sign, but they do need better sense of this goes this way?
Yeah, I think that's on the right track. But at the station, you will still be able to get all of the information you need. It's not going to be presented on one sign. It's going to be presented in a way that you get the information where and when you need it.
So people have weirdly strong attachment to signage. A couple of years ago, before you were here, there was a thing when a contractor used a slightly wrong font, so a slightly wrong typeface, not the traditional Helvetica New. And people, or at least design aficionados, freaked out. Their brains hurt because because it looked slightly off. Have you had other people reacting to your new signs that way?
We haven't. And that's partially because we are maintaining the heritage. We are maintaining the font styles and the aesthetic, from my perspective, the aesthetic values that Metro had when it first opened. We are still collecting feedback. So if you disagree, go to our website and you can submit a comment. But to date, no negative comments on the design.
As a native Washingtonian and a Metro user, I know that the thing that we locals gripe about most often about out-of-towners on Metro is their not understanding the rules of the escalators, about standing on one side and walking on the other. Is there anything that you can do with wayfinding or signage or paint one side green and the other side red or something like that that could actually solve this problem in a nudge kind of way?
Yeah, we'd love to. It's on the wish list. And as soon as we get finished with our system for train directions, we're going to get started on those escalators. So if anybody wants to mock anything up, feel free to send it along.
I think you might regret that, knowing CityCast readers. So when is all this going to be implemented? Like, is there a rough schedule?
Yeah, so we are finishing up the installation at L'Enfant Plaza, and we are going to be collecting feedback over the next month or so. We are then moving on to the next 2 stations, and we're also going to be doing more around rail to bus connections and bus to rail connections. I think that's an overlooked area that we can spend a lot more time with and make things a little bit easier for the customer.
Sarah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, print your love note to us in sans serif font on a new sign. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.